The streets of south-central Los Angeles have always whispered tales of darkness. These streets, with their long shadows and hidden corners, have seen more than their fair share of sorrow and despair. They hold secrets buried deep within the asphalt and concrete, secrets that many would rather forget. But none are as chilling as the saga of Lonnie Franklin Jr., forever known as the Grim Sleeper. His name sends shivers down the spine of those who remember the terror he inflicted. A man who lived a double life, hiding his monstrous nature behind a facade of normalcy. A name whispered in fear, a specter haunting the night. He was the embodiment of nightmares, a figure who lurked in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His presence was a constant reminder of the darkness that can reside within a person. He preyed on the vulnerable, the forgotten, those who society had cast aside, those who had no one to turn to. He exploited their desperation, their need for help, and turned it into a weapon against them. Women caught in the undertow of addiction and despair. They were easy targets for a predator like Franklin, who used their struggles to his advantage. Their lives, already fraught with challenges, were further shattered by his heinous acts. His crimes, a gruesome tapestry woven over 2 decades, would chill the city to its core. Each act of violence added another thread to this dark narrative, creating a legacy of fear and sorrow that would haunt Los Angeles for years to come. Franklin's reign of terror, a brutal counterpoint to the glitz and glamour often associated with Los Angeles. While the city shone brightly in some areas, it was marred by the darkness he brought to its streets. His actions were a stark reminder that evil can exist anywhere, even in the most unexpected places. He was a predator, hiding in plain sight. To his neighbors and acquaintances, he seemed like an ordinary man. But beneath that veneer of normalcy lay a cold and calculating killer, always on the lookout for his next victim. A monster masquerading as a man. His true nature was hidden behind a mask of everyday life, making it all the more difficult for anyone to suspect the horrors he was capable of. His victims, often overlooked and underestimated, became his trophies. Each life he took was a testament to his cruelty, a reminder of the pain he inflicted on those who were already suffering. Their lives extinguished, their stories left unfinished. They were more than just victims. They were individuals with dreams, hopes, and families who mourned their loss. Their absence left a void that could never be filled, a stark reminder of the Grim Sleeper's reign of terror. The first whispers of the Grim Sleeper's reign began in the mid-1980s. It was a time when Los Angeles was already grappling with a myriad of issues, from economic downturns to rising crime rates. The city, with its glitzy facade, hid a darker underbelly that was about to be exposed. South Central, a community grappling with poverty and gang violence, became his hunting ground. The area was already under siege from the crack epidemic, and the Grim Sleeper's presence only added to the turmoil. Residents lived in constant fear, unsure of who would be next. Young women, often involved in drugs and sex work, started disappearing. These women, marginalized and often overlooked by society, became easy targets for the Grim Sleeper. Their disappearances were initially met with indifference, but as the numbers grew, the community began to take notice. Their bodies, discarded in alleys and dumpsters, bore the horrific marks of his depravity. Fear gripped the community. Each crime scene told a story of unimaginable horror, and the residents of South Central were left to grapple with the reality that a serial killer was among them. Mothers kept their daughters close, their eyes scanning the streets with a mixture of apprehension and defiance. Families huddled together, sharing whispered warnings and desperate prayers for safety. The sense of community grew stronger, even as the shadow of fear loomed large. The LAPD, already stretched thin, struggled to connect the dots. The sheer volume of crime in the city made it difficult to see the pattern, and the Grim Sleeper's ability to blend into the background only added to the challenge. Detectives worked tirelessly, but the answers remained elusive. Each new victim brought a fresh wave of terror. The media began to take notice, and the Grim Sleeper's reign of terror became a nightly news story. The pressure on the police mounted, and the community's demand for justice grew louder. The Grim Sleeper was a ghost, leaving a trail of death and despair in his wake. His ability to evade capture only added to his legend, and the city of Los Angeles was left to wonder when or if the nightmare would ever end. Lonnie Franklin Jr. knew these streets intimately. He understood their rhythms, their vulnerabilities. He blended in, a chameleon navigating the shadows. This familiarity allowed him to operate with chilling impunity. He stalked his victims, often luring them with promises of drugs or money. His home, a nondescript bungalow on 81st Street, became his killing field, a place where terror and depravity unfolded behind closed doors. Neighbors, oblivious to the horrors within, continued their daily routines, unaware that a monster lived among them. The Grim Sleeper, emboldened by each passing year, tightened his grip on South Central. As the body count rose, a chilling pattern emerged. The Grim Sleeper, his moniker a testament to the apparent hiatus between his crimes, left his signature on each victim, a single gunshot wound to the chest, often delivered at close range. It was a cold, calculated act. The victims, often posed and photographed post-mortem, exposed a horrifying truth. This was not just about killing. It was about control, about possessing his victims even in death. The Grim Sleeper, driven by a dark and twisted fantasy, treated human life as his own personal playground. Section 5. A cold case thaws, the DNA connection. For years, the Grim Sleeper case remained frustratingly cold. The trail had gone cold, the leads exhausted. Then, in 2008, a breakthrough. A familial DNA search, a relatively new tool at the time, linked DNA found at the crime scenes to Christopher Franklin, Lonnie's son. The LAPD, their suspicions piqued, placed Lonnie Franklin Jr. under surveillance. An undercover operation dubbed Operation Longshot was put into motion. The goal: obtain a DNA sample from Franklin without arousing his suspicion. Section 6. Behind the mask, unmasking. Lonnie Franklin Jr. The trap was set. An undercover officer, posing as a waiter at a local pizza parlor, collected discarded pizza crust and silverware used by Franklin. The DNA analysis confirmed their worst fears. Lonnie Franklin Jr., the unassuming mechanic with a disarming smile, was the Grim Sleeper. On July 7, 2010, Franklin was arrested at his home on 81st Street. The news sent shockwaves through South Central. The boogeyman, the monster that had haunted their dreams for so long, had a name and a face. But the true horror of his crimes was far from over. Section 7. The Devil's Trophy Case, Photos from a House of Horrors. The search of Franklin's home revealed a scene straight out of a nightmare. Over 1,000 photographs and several hours of video footage, meticulously catalogued and stored, depicted women in various states of undress and unconsciousness. Many were later identified as his victims. These images, chilling testaments to his depravity, became known as the Grim Sleeper trophies. They painted a horrifying picture of a man obsessed with control and domination. Each photo, a stolen moment, a life extinguished, served as a stark reminder of the human cost of Franklin's reign of terror. Section 8. Justice delayed, not denied, guilty as charged. Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s trial began in 2016. The courtroom, packed with victims' families and a city desperate for closure, listened in stunned silence as the prosecution presented its case. The DNA evidence, the photographs, the chilling accounts from those who escaped his grasp, all pointed to Franklin's guilt. On May 5, 2016, the jury returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts. The death penalty, a fitting punishment for the gravity of his crimes, was handed down. Justice, though long delayed, had finally been served. Section 9. Echoes of Terror, a Community Haunted. Lonnie Franklin Jr., the Grim Sleeper, died in prison in 2020. His death marked the end of a dark chapter, but for many, it was not the closure they sought. The Grim Sleeper's reign of terror spanned over 2 decades, leaving a trail of devastation and unanswered questions. His death, met with a mixture of relief and lingering anger, did little to heal the wounds he inflicted. Families of the victims who had waited years for justice found themselves grappling with complex emotions. Relief that he could no longer harm anyone, but anger that he escaped the full weight of justice. The scars of his crimes run deep in South Central, a painful reminder of the vulnerability of the forgotten and the enduring power of fear. This community, already struggling with socio-economic challenges, found itself further burdened by the terror that Franklin brought into their lives. The Grim Sleeper case stands as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most vibrant cities. Los Angeles, known for its glitz and glamour, harbored a sinister secret that went unnoticed for far too long. The case exposed the systemic failures and the neglect of marginalized communities. It is a story of loss, of justice delayed, and of the resilience of a community forever marked by the shadow of a monster. Despite the pain and suffering, the community's spirit remains unbroken. They continue to seek justice, to remember the victims and to rebuild their lives, proving that even in the face of unimaginable horror, hope and resilience can prevail.